Good morning, Year 9. I hope you're well and having a lovely day. This is Mr. Caesar welcoming you to today's lesson. Today we'll be looking at story openings, so please could you write the date and the title and complete the do now. Why is the opening of a story very important? And can you think of different ways to start a story? So we have briefly looked at narrative hooks and story openings before, but this should consolidate and develop your formal knowledge. So please pause the video for 5 minutes in order to do this. So please write this down in your book. Story openings are very important because you need to be able to engage the reader or audience's attention quickly, or they will not want to read on. Different ways to start a story include dialogue, action, character, and setting. So please pause the video now to write this into your book. So the purpose of the opening. Writers often use the openings of stories to establish particular things, such as the atmosphere or mood or time, the setting or location, a particular character or relationship, a key event or action, direct contact with the reader, and questions for the reader to think about. Please pause the video to write this into your book. Okay, so narrative hooks are used in different types of story openings, such as dialogue, direct speech hook, action, the puzzling hook, the subtle hook, character, the funny hook, the direct address hook, and the subtle hook, and setting, the subtle hook, the atmospheric hook, and the visual hook. Please pause the video to write this down. Okay, what I'd like you to do for your first task is identify the type of opening. So let's read through them together, then you're going to pause the video and identify which of the story opening types that we've looked at are each of these. Once there were 4 children whose names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. The hottest day of the summer so far was drawing to a close, and a drowsy silence lay over the large square houses of Privet Drive. I'm going shopping in the village, George's mother said to George on Saturday morning. So be a good boy and don't get up into mischief. When I was 4 months old, my mother died suddenly, and my father was left to look after me all by himself. So pause the video now for 5 minutes or so to identify these types of openings. Okay, so this is a character opening. It introduces the 4 characters who are going to be key characters in the story. Not sure if you identified it. It's from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Then the next one, Privet Drive, I'm sure you got that one, that's Harry Potter. And then you've got dialogue, you've got a character speaking. For the Harry Potter one, you've got setting, describing the place, and then action. So the death is a reference to action that took place, thereby engaging the attention of the reader. So please can you make sure you've got those 4 things written down. So task 2, creating interest. Write down the opening type or narrative hook used. Write down why each one is effective. They murdered him. You better not tell nobody but God. All children, except one, grow up. They shoot the white girl first. It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. So pause the video for 5 minutes or so to answer the questions. So on this slide you've got the answers. So they murdered him. It's action, the act of murder. And you ask who, why, how, and who might be next. So it's really good at creating suspense. Then you better not tell nobody but God is dialogue. So through the use of direct address. You could also argue it's action because it's a command, or you could say it's character. So this one is debatable. I went for dialogue, but other ones are fine as well. So it tells us this must be a big secret, and it gets the reader asking what the secret is. So this one's character. All children grow up. All children except one grow up. So you kind of start asking which one doesn't, what happens to that one, why doesn't he or she? They shoot the white girl first is action. Why is anyone being shot? Who is the next person? Is this about racism? So we've got 2 which allude to the act of murder. Clearly a really good way to grab the reader's attention. And then finally, it was a bright cold day in April and the clocks were striking 13, setting. Clocks can't strike 13. It is sci-fi, must be an unusual plot, can't wait to see what happens. So you've got 5 minutes to check your answers and note down anything you didn't get. So task 3. Read each extract and for each one answer the following questions. What type of story opening is it and how does each one help set the mood of the story? And you should recognise these story openings. The winter was a long time going. A freezing wind blew through the streets of the city, and overhead the snow clouds moved across the sky. The room was warm and clean, the curtains drawn, the 2 table lamps, a light hers and the one by the empty chair opposite. On the sideboard behind her, 2 tall glasses, soda water, whiskey, fresh ice cubes in the thermos bucket. She was one of those pretty and charming girls, born, as though fate had blundered over her, into a family of artisans. She had no marriage portion, no expectations, no means of getting known, understood, loved, and wedded by a man of wealth and distinction, and she let herself be married off to a little clerk in the Ministry of Education. So pause the video for 10 minutes to answer the 2 questions. Okay, so the first one is setting. It's describing what's happening. So the winter was a long time going. A freezing wind blew through the streets of the city, and overhead the snow clouds moved across the sky. So you've got really powerful imagery used here, which creates this idea that it's very, very cold. The adjective freezing again emphasizes just how cold it is, and it creates that powerful image in the mind of the reader, engaging them with the story. Then you've got the room was warm and clean, the curtains drawn, the 2 table lamps alight, hers and the one by the empty chair opposite. On the sideboard behind her, 2 tall glasses, soda, water, whiskey, fresh ice cubes in the thermos bucket. So that's again setting, again as with the first one, creating this powerful image in the head of the reader, engaging them with the story, providing a really good backdrop to all the action and character development that will follow. And finally, a change, the last one, you've got character. She was one of those pretty and charming girls, born as though fate had blundered over her into a family of artisans. So pretty and charming, we're starting to get an idea of what she's like. She had no marriage portion, no expectations, no means of getting known, understood, loved, and wedded by a man of wealth and distinction. So the repetition of the word no tells us that she doesn't have anything, no marriage portion, no expectations, no means of getting known, further emphasised through the use of the tricolon. She let herself be married off to a little clerk in the Ministry of Education. Let herself indicates the passivity. She's not in control of her future. She's almost at the whim of fate and the people around her. So a really interesting insight into her character. So please can you make sure you have some notes about what I've just said. Okay, so for task 4, using the picture as a prompt, write 3 different openings to a story entitled The Storm. Practice writing opening your story with dialogue, action and setting. So pause the video for 10 to 15 minutes to write these 3 different openings. Okay, so finally let's have a reflection. There are different types of story openings, but all are important in order to grab the reader's attention. So next time you're reading a book, after you've read the first couple of lines, have a pause and think about what kind of opening was that? What narrative hooks did the author use to grab my attention, and were they effective? Do you want to read on? And if so, why? So those are really interesting questions that you should ask yourself whenever you start reading a new book. So that brings us to the end of today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed it and found it helpful. Thank you very much for your hard work, and I'll see you next time.